Hello, and thank you for joining me today as we discuss systems theory and how everything is connected. Basically, why our relationships with animals and other systems around the world matter. Before we get started, let me introduce myself. My name is Brenna Anders, and I am the Senior Manager of Education and Advocacy at Pasado Safe Haven, a nonprofit on a mission to end animal cruelty. We're working to alleviate animal cruelty at the root causes through our holistic programs that really work to tackle all the various levels of our system that impact animals in our community. One of the many ways Pasado Safe Haven works to end animal cruelty is through education, educating people on how our relationship with animals can impact the world around us and the greater systems of our earth. So that brings in systems theory. What is systems theory? So the exact definition is systems theory can be explained as the intersection of multiple interrelated systems. According to this theory, all systems are interrelated parts creating an ordered whole, and each subsystem influences other parts of the whole. There have been dozens of iterations of systems theory applied to society, science, and nature. Basically, that's just a long-winded way of saying that everything is connected. So since everything is connected, how can we as individuals make a difference? How can we as individuals make more ethical choices that align with our values around animals and how animals then relate to larger world systems? The first thing is to really arm yourself with the facts. The more you know, the more you're able to align your actions with your values. If you don't have the knowledge behind it, it's really hard to make informed choices. Today we are going to talk about how our choices related to food and animal products can impact animal welfare, humans, and the planet as a whole. All of these things are connected, and all of them stem from our choices that we're making every single day, 3 times a day when we sit down for a meal. To start off with the animal side of things, I am going to begin with some stories from some of the rescued animals at Pasado Safe Haven. Who better to tell the stories of animals than the animals themselves? First up is Journey the calf. So this is Journey's story. This is Journey. And Journey was lucky enough to be born at Pasado Safe Haven. He was born into freedom. Cows are very loyal and social animals who make friends for life, and this includes a very strong maternal connection between mothers and their babies. However, Journey's fate would have been much different if his mother hadn't been rescued by Pasado Safe Haven just hours before giving birth to Journey. Journey and his mother Peaches were some of the lucky ones. Many people don't realize that just like humans, a mother cow only produces milk in order to nurse her baby. But in order to take that baby's milk and sell it to humans, calves are taken away from their mothers within a few days of their birth. This would have been the same fate for Journey and his mother Peaches if they hadn't been rescued by Pasado's Safe Haven. And because Journey is a boy, he actually wouldn't have been used by the dairy industry at all. Male calves in the dairy industry, of course, don't produce milk, so they are seen as a dairy byproduct, and at a very young age are sold to be slaughtered for veal. Next up, we have Splash, who is a very special pig with a very special story. Splash escaped from a pig farm where she was going to be used for meat. When it was time for her to be killed alongside her brothers and her sisters, Splash panicked, of course, and somehow found a way to escape. When she escaped, she swam across a river to safety. A nearby farmer found her and, knowing what her fate would be, took pity on her and contacted Pasado's Safe Haven. Pasado's Safe Haven was able to give Splash a home in safety and in freedom. Pigs, like Splash, are known to be some of the smartest animals in the world. But sadly, pigs are also one of the most abused animals across the world. Amazingly, pigs can actually learn simple video games, they can figure out puzzles, they can do tricks, they can be potty trained, and studies show that they're actually just as smart as a preschool-aged child. Even though Pasado's Safe Haven rescued Splash, it was actually her that taught us more than we could ever repay her with. She taught us about love, compassion, forgiveness, understanding, empathy, respect, and kindness.
Almost 100 factory farm hens are getting a second chance at life. They were rescued today, and once they reach 2 years old, hens are killed after egg production declines. So Pasado Safe Haven says hens live their whole lives in wire cages about the size of a piece of paper stacked on top of each other. And they swooped in and saved them. They say they snip their beaks from pecking each other, and the sanctuary adds that egg factories are awful places for animals.
Our goal is to nurse them back to health and get them ready to be adopted into loving homes. So we'll treat them as members of a family.
The Safe Haven says 99% of eggs come from facilities where they say this hen suffered tremendously, and the slaughter of chickens is unregulated. Give Pasados a call if you're interested in adopting one of these chickens.
Kindle the hen was rescued with a larger group of chickens that Pasado Safe Haven fondly calls the flock of friends. She spends her days doing what chickens like to do naturally. She does daily dust baths to keep her feathers and her skin clean. She forages for bugs outside, and of course she spends lots of time out in the sunshine. This is a stark contrast from what her life was before she was rescued by Pasado Safe Haven. Kindle was rescued from a factory farm where she was kept in tiny wire cages with probably 4 or 5 other chickens, amidst thousands of chickens that were kept in a warehouse with no access to the outdoors, no access to sunlight. And sadly, many of them, when they were just days old, had their beaks cut off by a sharp blade in order to stop them from harming themselves and others when kept in those small wire cages. If you look at this slide, you can see that I have the image of an iPad. That is about the average size that a chicken gets when it is in a factory farm. Which brings me to the animal agriculture industry. In today's world, our farms are not the farms that we see in pictures. The farms that we have today are large industries known as factory farms. The animal agriculture industry does a very good job at hiding their standard practices with consumers. And that's because if consumers saw what goes on in factory farms every single day, they would no longer consume those products because nobody wants to contribute to that form of suffering. The problem is what we see in commercials and advertising is a stark contrast to the realities that are found in factory farming. While small farms do still exist, it is hard to know where our food truly comes from. And the reality is the majority of our food, the vast majority of our food, comes from large industrial factory farms that put profit above the health and well-being of the animals. Because today's farming keeps us disconnected from our food and where our food comes from, we forget that animals are complex. They are problem solvers. They have ways of communicating with each other. They have different hierarchies within their communities, and they can form bonds and relationships with each other and with humans. Now that we've looked at how our choices in connection to food impact animals, let's talk about the human side of it. Again, because the animal agriculture industry and larger factory farms are really profit-driven and not looking at the well-being of the animals, they're also not looking at the well-being of their workers. In fact, they typically prey on vulnerable populations who are just working, trying to support their families. They might be in some economic distress. A lot of times they are minority workers or undocumented workers so that the larger farm doesn't have to pay them that much and doesn't have to give them a lot of basic human rights in their working system. And then a lot of times it is based off of fear too. People are working because they're supporting their families, and then they're afraid that they're going to lose their job if they speak up about the poor working conditions that they are in. No matter who you are, working in the animal agriculture industry can have a huge psychological toll. When somebody is forced to kill multiple times a day, hundreds of times a day, over and over again, that can have a huge impact on somebody's mental health. It's this kind of repetitive work that builds a lot of stress. There's a lot of built up stress that happens when you're repetitively killing a living thing over and over again. Also, the long hours and again, that repetitive work makes a lot of people numb to the suffering of these animals, which again has big time psychological tolls that can even be brought home to the family after the workday is done. As I said before, this is a profit-driven industry. It's all about production and putting out big numbers and big profits. This has obvious large impacts on the animals that are being killed, but it has huge impacts on the humans that are just doing their jobs trying to support their families. There's bad working conditions. There's a lack of safety, a huge lack of safety, because they're operating large tools and machinery that can really harm a person if they aren't used properly. Beyond the individual workers who are impacted by the animal agriculture industry, there's also the communities. Now, communities that have a factory farm in them or nearby, their water is often severely contaminated by the runoff from these farms. If you look at this picture here, this is a manure lagoon outside of a pig farm. So all of that is contaminated water that is then seeping into the ground and seeping into the waterways. This is known to lead to toxic algae buildup, and this algae buildup actually kills a lot of native animals that come into contact with it. Another big problem with our animal agriculture industry is world hunger. Believe it or not, we actually grow enough food around the world to feed all of the hungry people, all of the hungry countries. The problem is that food that we are growing is actually being taken and used to feed the animals that Western countries consume. So this is a huge human rights issue that we are a part of, because of course one cow takes a lot more food, grain, resources, water than one human that might be hungry. Now that we have talked about the systems of animals and humans, let's talk about the planet. This is an informative infographic that was created by Pasado Safe Haven. You can find this on our website, pasadosafehaven.org, and print it off and download it yourself. But this infographic shows a lot of important facts about how animal agriculture impacts our world. Did you know that animal agriculture is the leading cause of species extinction, ocean dead zones, habitat destruction, and climate change? Let's start with talking about resources. Water is just one of the many resources that is overused by the animal agriculture industry. Did you know that one cow drinks on average about 50 gallons of water a day? Now, what about species extinction and the loss of biodiversity? This is what rainforest destruction and deforestation looks like. And of course, this was home to many wild animals and species. But in order to grow corn and soy to feed the cows that we humans consume, we have to remove a lot of rainforest in order to create space to grow those crops. And of course, due to this loss of habitat here, we are destroying the home of many, many animals. And those animals are displaced. They have nowhere to go. And that has become a huge cause of species extinction in our world. Now on to climate change. Did you know that the animal agriculture industry produces more CO2 than the entire transportation sector combined? Also, animal agriculture has been called out by the United Nations as one of the leading causes to climate change. In fact, the UN recommends that people cut back on their animal product consumption as a way to make the world a better place. So after learning all of these facts, after hearing these stories, you probably feel really overwhelmed. And that is absolutely natural. That is absolutely normal. When we hear about hard and terrible things that are happening around the world, it's really normal to feel helpless, like you can't do anything about it. But the good news is, as consumers, we really can make a difference. There is so much power in our choices. By making the choice to go vegan, you are impacting not only animals, but all different systems and the world around us. It just takes a few small steps. You don't have to go vegan overnight. Most people don't. In fact, little changes make a world of difference. Try Meatless Monday, or try just one meal a week, or maybe one meal a day. Whatever works best for you is the best place to start, and it really does all make a difference. What's great is that now trying vegan or trying vegetarian or trying to just cut back on your animal product consumption is easier than ever. There are tons of products on the shelves these days that are made to replace those things that we all love. So you don't have to give up ice cream or cookies or barbecues. All of these things are available in a plant-based option. There are also a few tricks of the trade to get you started. Of course, there's our food choices, but our cleaning products and our shampoos and makeup products and things like that, those can all have animal products or animal testing involved with them too. And there are some helpful symbols to help you choose the products that align with your values. So look for symbols like these, especially the leaping bunny, and that will get you on the right track with finding the right products for you. Our choices and our actions directly represent what our values are. And every little change is making a huge difference. It's showing that we are compassionate, that we can work together, and we can help not only animals, but many, many systems that stem from our animal agriculture industry. We can help humans, and we can help our environment and the greater world around us. Thank you for joining me today. And remember, as consumers, we have the power to change the world.